in the Department of English. Tonight I'm going to be sharing with you some of my research on rural English teaching, specifically across the state of Montana. And the concept that I've been thinking about when people ask me, what is the difference between being an English teacher and being a rural English teacher? I've been wrestling with a way to answer that in a way that really permeates and showcases the hard work and the innovation and the creativity of those rural English teachers in Montana. And the phrase that I'm using right now is this notion of community curricular infusions. In education, we have place-based pedagogies where we ask teachers to really examine their place, to allow their students to build connections to their curriculum and think together about what does it mean to be studying this discipline here and now, what has it meant in the past, what might it mean for our future. We also have critical place-based approaches that allow and encourage our students and teachers to ask questions such as, what has happened here? What will happen here? And reflect together about what is happening and where students would like to see their place grow, and how in many places across Montana, how students would like to see their places thrive. What I am also trying to argue is that we also need a way to think with place-based pedagogies and critical place-based pedagogies and think about the ruralities that infuse our teachers and their teaching moments. Our rural English teachers do not separate themselves from the communities that they are living in, nor the communities that they are creating in their classrooms. And I have learned this from incredibly generous teachers over the past 6 years. Community curricular infusions are a way of being in the classroom. They're a way of being a rural English teacher. They are exhausting ways of being. They are prideful ways of being, and they allow teachers and students to root within their communities, and they allow space for learning over time. They also allow collaborations with the local. The different rural explorations that I've done over the past 6 years in my time at Montana State have been through different grants and initiatives that I have been a part of and led. You'll notice several of them are collaborative. And as I have worked with my colleagues both here, across the nation, across international borders, and just even across campus, it's been incredible to think together about how do teachers share their stories with us, and how can we leverage different professional networks and communities to bring a particular kind of professionalism to even our smallest and remote regions in Montana. I do want to mention that the majority of the photos in this presentation are from MSU students who have taken part in our rural practicum that MSU offers. This practicum began 3 years ago in the Department of Education, led by Dr. Tina Verslin and a team of others, and they are about to send the third iteration of students out on Sunday for their spring break. In the field of English education, we are quite metrocentric. We think about what it means to build curriculum, to do curriculum, and to do this with our urban students, because there has been a high need for social justice in urban areas in this country. Unfortunately, that has meant that our rural areas and our students and our teachers have been underexposed. They have not been made visible for the creative, innovative, exhausting work that they have done. So taking this on is truly an issue of social justice. My own journey into studying rural English teaching is not just because I'm located here and prepare future English teachers and support them in graduate work and through my work with the Yellowstone Writing Project, but it's because I was a rural Minnesota teacher. And this picture was from one of my students when I was teaching on the prairie in Minnesota. So you may recognize the bear at Bozeman High. And my colleague Rob Patron and I were about to go to a conference when the bear meandered through the hallways. And so we used this in a talk, and we shared with people, this is a day in a particular school in Montana, and people said, "What do you mean a day? Isn't that every day?" And we said, "No, of course it's not. It's a bear in a high school." Even in Montana, in bear country, that's not normal. And in Montana, not every place is bear country. And so it's been important for us to think about how to share ruralities within English education, and to think about how do we prepare undergraduate students to be licensed and to teach across the state of Montana and beyond, and how do we support those teachers once they're out on the job, particularly if they're out alone. And so we did a study, and we focused on 33 of our Montana English teachers and one rural consultant. We interviewed them, we spent time in their classrooms, we wandered town, we had lunch and dinner in towns, we talked to people. Once a man stopped us, he was driving by in his truck, and he stopped, and he backed up, and he said, "I don't recognize you two. I'm so-and-so, what are you doing in town?" And as soon as we shared that we were working with the English teacher, we had him in. And it was very interesting to feel that visibility, and to notice how teachers and professionals and people in general are noticed in small towns. So as we talked with teachers, we really asked them, what are your experiences? What are your challenges? And they were gracious with their time. And we went across the state, we went across the class sizes of schools in the state, and we found out that the people that we found and the people who said yes matched the demographics of teachers in this country, primarily white, primarily female, and it was important for us to go across the range of experience. We got first-year teachers all the way up to a teacher who had 36 years of experience teaching in rural Montana. What they told us was that the job is hard, and the job is amazing, and we are the only English teacher within 60 miles. And that means something different, and that means something challenging. We wear a lot of hats, was literally a phrase every single person said in the rural schools. Personally, we again went back to this notion of visibility and surveillance. We found out that these teachers felt that they were always on the clock. They were never not a teacher because they were seen all of the time. One teacher said, "I walked into school on Friday and a student of mine said, 'There was a blue truck in your driveway this morning.' You don't drive a blue truck. Who's visiting?" And it took a moment, and another said, "When I was first married, we lived next to the local bar, and so my husband and I would go to the bar, and I held many spontaneous teacher conferences right there at the bar. My husband was not impressed." So from these stories, from these ways of being infused with their community and their role as teachers, these teachers, unfortunately, are rare now. These teachers need us to support them in different ways. These teachers need us to talk to our current students about how to take care of themselves and how to take care of one another, how to be a colleague with people across disciplines and grade levels, because you might be the only English person in the building. And our last one that I want to share here on the slide is she said, "My best advice is that teachers start counseling sooner rather than later." She said, "We need people to talk to who are objective. Our colleagues are also exhausted, and we don't want to just spin negativity. We want to take care of ourselves." As professors, we thought, well, what can we do? We can help with advocacy. We can notice and pay attention to the initiatives in Montana legislation around finances, teacher housing, loan forgiveness. We can think about mentoring programs and emotional supports. We can also build professional and curricular development for undergraduate students and our teachers that are in the field. And we have to recognize that rural English teaching is distinct. You don't leave the community behind when you enter your classroom. It's always a part of you, and you take it with you. And you take your students to the local restaurant to do some writing on a beautiful day. And in so doing, you're able to think innovatively about how to enact school in your particular place with your particular people. And amazing things happen. One online writing group that I ran with first-year teachers across the state of Montana gave them an opportunity to write about what their communities were. The one that strikes me the most is a woman. She said, "I'm one of 2 women who are single and in my 20s in town." And it took me 3 days before I truly understood what my female students were trying to mentor me into and understand was the ways I needed to live and change my habits during overhaul. And it became a part of our curriculum. Taking time to write together as rural Montana English teachers just starting out in new communities mattered to them. It built networks, it decreased their isolation, and it allowed them to thrive and feel that they were being heard and that they were normal. The final project that I just want to show you some of these beautiful faces of some of our incredible teachers in northeastern Montana is some of the teachers at the Savage School. They approached our writing project and said, "We'd love for you to give us a curriculum about writing. We need to change our writing curriculum." And we said, "Well, why don't we work with you so you can create your own curriculum, so you can build it around Savage, you can build it around your own strengths." And so we worked together and created a team of leaders for 2 years who worked with their teachers, their colleagues, and their students, and the Landscapes of Savage is available on Amazon. It's beautiful, it's full of student drawings. Across the discipline, how students went to farms and measured and studied and interviewed and really got their community involved in their schoolwork. It makes a difference to make our teachers visible, even in our smallest towns. And so here, this last picture is just showing you taking these teachers to a professional conference and letting them know that we here in Bozeman, even though MSU is located here, we are still their university, we are part of their network, and we care about the growth for them and their students. Thank you.
Do you ever take the MSU English education major students to the rural places?
Did you ask, do we take them there?
Yeah.
So the question is, do we take students to the rural places? That is that rural practicum that Dr. Versland started with the team over in education. And so yes, the students go to different rural communities and work. What we also do in English, and I believe in several education courses as well, we invite in guest speakers, we invite teachers in, sometimes just through WebEx, so they don't have to travel to us. But they share their stories. I've been connected in different collaborations with teachers online with their students, and so my students are mentoring their students, both on what it means to be a college student and also what it means to be a writer in general, and they get to know one another and their different places and locations. And then there are also seminars where rural administrators come. Again, this is sponsored by education, and Tina Versland is involved in that. And administrators come and share what their communities are like and talk to the students about their concerns and their excitement.
For the purposes of your work, what is your definition of rural Montana?
It's a great question. So we struggled with that one for a while. We essentially, though we drove around the full state, we were in towns that were very small, right? There were 3 students in the senior class, for example, and then the next town we drove to had 30 students in the senior class. We reached out to teachers and said, we're doing this work. If you consider yourself rural Montana, we would love to talk with you. So we let them define it. We know the different definitions around location, right, and distance from an urban space. But the piece we found most alarming, and the reason we wanted our participants to define it for us, was because, especially in our field, when people would talk about rural and about suburban and about urban, it was always set against urban. A rural place was not an urban place. A rural place was X amount of miles from an urban place. And so always setting them together to build that definition was very troubling. So we are trying to allow our teachers and our students to bring their own definitions to it so we can share what ruralities mean to them.